Monotheistic society that's developing now, a one true living God thinking that's being embraced by a lot of places that are developing and that are growing in society. A lot of developing areas are beginning to fully get on board with the fact that there is this thing called monotheism, that polytheism is beginning to fade in certain parts of this region, with the exception of one particular region that is remaining very polytheistic during this time, and that is the Arabian Peninsula, or what we have today as the area known as Saudi Arabia, and much of that region still remaining very polytheistic. And so in this time, we see polytheism, it's kind of the way of this area. The Arabs, though, because they're living near Jewish people, and because they're living around some newly converted Christian people and people of the Christian faith, they're hearing that the Jews have monotheism. They're hearing that the Christians, of course, have monotheism. But they're sitting there going, but man, here we are. We're a polytheistic people. The Jews have a book. The Christians have a book. What do we have? We don't have anything like compared to them. And in that area, in the Arabian Peninsula, there's not a one economy, there's not a one government. We have all these tribal leaders, there's not a unity involved. Every tribe has their own God. And now the Christians and the Jews seem like they're more organized, and everything seems to flow up to this one true living God, and all living together in this same area on the Arab Peninsula. We have Jews there, we have Christians there during that time. They're getting along pretty well. But there's a problem. As they begin to hear about the fact that there is this monotheistic thinking, it's like, you know what, it feels like we're being left out here. You know, why are they getting this thing, and here we are with still our polytheistic thinking? And then in 610 AD, in the month of Ramadan, a businessman named Muhammad bin Abdullah goes into a cave, he comes out, he goes home, talks to his wife, tells her that he has been given a message or a vision from God in this cave. Now, we know that Muhammad, during that time, he says that he has heard from the angel Gabriel something that is debated, something very much disputed. He says he hears from that Gabriel was the one who gave him this vision. Muhammad is illiterate, so he has to ask his wife and cousin to begin to write down the things, the visions that he's been given. Over a 2-year period, this writing begins to take place. The Quran, it means recital. The Quran is what we get from those 2 years of writing. And in living in the city, this area called Mecca, in the Arabian Peninsula, our guy that we're talking about here, Muhammad, he begins to share this interpretation that he got in the cave. He begins to share with people during this time. In fact, a lot of people believe, early historians believe, that it was not the intent of Muhammad to start like some sort of new religion, that his original intent was that God spoke to him in that cave to become a mouthpiece for the people, the Arab people, that would direct them towards monotheism. And so he gets this message, and he believes that he can bring something to the Arab people to give them a way to become like the Jews, to become like the Christians, and to get in line with this monotheistic society. And he believed that he would be the person that would be the messenger for the Arab Peninsula. In his mind, he believed that as he was sharing this message with the people of Mecca, that it was all directed towards the same one true living God that the Jews and the Christians had. And he decides that as he's sharing this, it would be a good idea for the Arab people to finally have in their culture something that Jews and Christians have. Now, the Arabs, of course, are struggling with the fact that they have tribes and tribal leaders with gods and different gods all over the land. And now our guy, Muhammad, has come along, and he's preaching about this one true living God. Allah was God, and he's embracing that we should respect the Old Testament. He's talking about the things of the Old Testament. In fact, in the Quran 29:46, he says, "Dispute not with the people of the book, save in the fairer manner." And he says, the people of the book, that's a reference to the Old Testament. He says, we're not going to dispute that. And if we have discussions, we're going to do it in a very polite way. But here's what he says. We believe it has been sent down to us, and what has been sent down to you, our God and your God is one, and to him we have surrendered. Muhammad very much in the early time, he would bow down in prayer in those early days, and he would actually face towards Jerusalem, the holy city. Now, if you know about the Islamic faith now, their back is to the holy city, and they would turn towards Mecca today. But during that time, because the fact that Muhammad did believe that he was just in line, just kind of helping the Arab people get in line with what Christians and Jews already had, he did bow and he did pray towards the city of Jerusalem. But when he began to teach about this, the people in the Arabian Peninsula didn't all accept him. Muhammad believed that through his vision, he would be welcomed by Jesus. He would be welcomed by John the Baptist one day. He would be welcomed by the Old Testament prophets. He had a vision that Jesus and the Old Testament prophets and John the Baptist would all see him as very much in line with them. But now all of a sudden, as he's preaching and sharing and bringing this faith forth, he's connecting with the poor and the disenfranchised in the area of Mecca. But there's the tribal leaders and the big bosses and the people who are leading in the regions. They don't like this message because it's going to bring a great change, and it's going to empower some of the people who aren't socially maybe where the leaders are, and so they get frustrated with it. In fact, Muhammad is actually teaching that, hey, if you are Islamic, you don't even marry these non-Islamic Arabs. They're tainted. And so we only want to marry people of the Islamic faith. And when the Arab people hear stuff like this, they're going, we can't do this. And so they kind of are pushing him out and say, you need to get out of here. You need to get out of Mecca. So Muhammad, he packs up about 70 families, and they go up the road to this place called Medina. In Medina, we see that Muhammad gets a little bit more of a foothold as he's sharing his faith. In 622, he heads there to Medina, 622 AD, and in that area, there are Jewish leaders, there are Jewish tribes there, and in those Jewish tribes, some of them kind of take on Muhammad and teach him some things about the Old Testament more richly and more deeply. And what Muhammad discovers in 622 AD is that, you know what, the Jews have this lineage, and the Christians have this lineage in the Bible going back to Abraham, and it's very powerful, the father of many nations. And he begins to hear that from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, Abraham's children, he had Isaac, but before he had Isaac, there was this other child, and his name was Ishmael. He hears about Ishmael, and he sees Muhammad a potential direct connection for the Arab people all the way to Abraham. This is a powerful thing for him and for the people, because, man, if we can embrace this Ishmael, man, the way we have to be seen, the way we have to be treated, the way people look at us, they have to see us in this very same level. We have this direct connection to Ishmael. Now, as the Jews and Christians hear this talk in the area of Medina, that bothers them, because the Jews and the Christians are looking at their texts and they're going, hey, we don't have the flow like you have with Ishmael in what we read. In fact, in what we read in the scriptures, everything points to the lineage that all it goes to Jesus Christ, and we have in Christianity today. As we look in the scriptures, even as a Jewish person looks at the scriptures, this thought about Ishmael being some sort of powerful lineage going to Abraham that would be supplanting or taking the place or be equal to what the Jews and the Christians believe. And let me tell you, in Medina, there was a group of people that didn't want to hear this. So now, as this teaching is being brought forth in an area that puts this influence of the Arab people at this level that has never been seen before, there's a group that embraces, there's a group that pushes back. But what we know in Medina is that Muhammad became a political leader, a social leader. He became very revered. And at one time, because of the sort of pushing away of the Jewish and the Christian people of Muhammad, he makes a decision in a prayer to turn his back to Jerusalem and to bow and to pray with his eyes on Mecca. Another thing that happened while he was in Medina is there was this thing that took place. It was caravan raiding that took place. In Medina, as people would travel from Mecca and other parts of the region, and they were wealthy and they had money and they were moving their possessions and their food, their assets on these caravans, the people of the Islamic faith got really good. It was almost like a sport where they got really good at robbing these caravans, taking their stuff from the wealthier people, sort of a rob the rich to pay the poor mentality. And the Muslim people were engaged in this constantly. Finally, the people of Mecca got sick of it, being raided all the time. So from Mecca, the Arab people send up about 10,000 army personnel to go deal with the people of Mecca and all of this raiding. And now Muhammad, he gets 3,000 to go up against the 10,000 Arabs. It looks like Muhammad's toast, and then all of a sudden we see that the 3,000 wipe out the 10,000. And now Muhammad is revered, some sort of incredible military leader, and maybe he does have this status that he says he has. He gets even more elevated and more lifted up. He eventually, in this battle of the trench, leads a victory there. Decides now that his faith is growing. He's going to head back to Mecca. There's a slaughtering that takes place just outside of Mecca. And then we see Muhammad and the Muslim people move in, take control of Mecca. And we kind of have that has happened ever since, in this amazing position now that Muhammad is in, this guy. And we can argue about faith. We can argue about Islam, and we will here in just a moment. But here's what we know about Muhammad. He led a great faith change on the Arab Peninsula. He brought social change. He brought national change, political change, led militarily, and in 632, he died. Now today, the Arabs struggle because of things related to Muhammad. I don't know if you've heard on the news, you've probably heard people talk about the Sunnis and the Shiites. Sunni Muslims and Shiite Muslims. Sunni Muslims are the majority of Muslims in the world. Over 80% of Muslims are Sunni Muslims. And then, but you have the smaller groups, which we struggle with in America. We struggle with more of the Shiite Muslims. They are a little bit of a different flavor, a little more radical in the things that they believe. The difference between the Sunni and the Shiite is this. When Muhammad died, the Sunni people, what we have today as the Sunni Muslim, they believed that we should choose the successor to Muhammad in some sort of piety or, way of people living. And the leadership from the tribal leaders and the leaders of the Muslim faith should all be chosen based on the way that they have lived and the way that they have lived in the faith especially. It would be sort of like in Catholicism, the way the Pope might be selected, in the way that he's living and his holiness. We're going to choose this person. And the Sunni Muslims, they have to this day believe that that is the way we should have the succession of the Muslim faith taking place. But then the Shiites, they embraced that the lineage would come from descendants and people related to Muhammad. In the bloodline sort of mentality. So we have that battle and it's warring, and you can see that taking place. Muslims killing Muslims over this discrepancy about who was large and in charge when Muhammad died. That's a little bit about the life of Muhammad. And here's what we have about Muhammad. A lot of information. It is not like we can't get excellent history on this man's life. We have a lot of things. That's good news. We can learn about that and we can study. And we're going to do some of that here today. He launches a religion that now is the second largest faith in the world. I put in your notes, there's 5 ways that you can measure another faith. And what we're going to do is just in this series here, take some time today to compare the truth about Christianity, how it compares to Islam, so that you can understand a little bit more about how to explain it if somebody ever talks to you about it. 5 ways to measure another faith. Here's the first thing I put in your notes. We can examine the document for that faith. In this case, we can compare the Bible to the Quran, the recital. Now, Muhammad declares himself as this very true, very powerful prophet of God, that he has complete credibility to deliver what he's delivered and to give us what we have in the Quran today. And Quran 33:40. It says this: Muhammad is not the father of any of your men, but he is the apostle of Allah and the last of the prophets, and Allah is cognizant of all things. This is one of many declarations that says that this is holy, that this is God-given, that we should trust this word. He's saying that,